This one's for anyone who wants to sound more confident and credible on the phone to talk with a seller of a distressed house. This is the podcast for 10xing your income and replacing your W-2 through wholesaling real estate, a business model where you can make $90,000 for finding a rundown house, passing it off to an investor. My name is David Lecko. I created a process that's helped 10,000 people close their very first deal in all 50 states with the software platform called DealMachine.
And my name is Ryan Haywood, and back in 2019, I started a 30-day wholesaling challenge. I got my first deal done in 14 days, and have gone on to do over 400 deals. Today's guest was actually one of my first buyers when I started wholesaling.
Yes, and I just met him in Tampa, Florida to show him the new DealMachine dialer. Check out this video of how good he is on the phone.
You get a second?
Who's this?
It's Troy Kearns. I was just driving by the house on Lawn Street the other day, and I was just wondering if you had a second to talk.
I told him before I wasn't trying to sell my house. I've told y'all 1,000 times.
Oh, I've never talked to you, Tracy. I've never talked to you.
I'm saying, but I get so many letters. I wasn't trying to be an asshole, but it gets old, man.
I got no problem. I'm sorry to bother you. I just have one question.
I apologize. I didn't mean you, but I do. Man, some people I tell no, and they start sending my wife letters and calling her when I say no, and it's nerve-wracking, really. But
man,
no, I'm really not, bro.
I would be absolutely the same way that you are, Tracy, and I'm apologizing. You know, I don't.
You're fine, but I'm apologize because I know that's your business. I've done a lot of things. I don't mean like that, but it just I'm a little high-headed about that right now. I apologize.
Man, that's all. It's all good, man. As long as you're rooting for the Chiefs, we're on the same page, right?
Oh man, what else we gonna do? We was rooting for them before they start winning.
Yeah.
Quit now.
Well, I'll tell you what. I know you're not interested in selling your house. I've got a few houses in that neighborhood. Do you happen to know anybody who might be interested, or do you know any other distressed property? I might have had your number on accident. You're certainly not distressed.
You know, man, it's so many people buying them up. It's hard to do. I know one guy, but he got a big house, and I think he's already got a realtor working on it. There was a couple around here, but the lady just sold them before I really. Yeah, they hard to get, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. You got white guys.
For sure. You know, I got about, just to tell you about myself, and you can look me up. I'm just a straight up guy, Tracy. My name's Troy Kearns, and I'll tell you what, like, if you ever know anybody, you could just write my number down. I could give you my cell phone, and if you ever do change your mind or know somebody that wants to sell, I'll tell you one thing. I always pay like a $1,000 referral fee for just somebody if I buy their house. This is what I do for a living. And I understand sometimes, you know, I don't mean to call you and bother you, but I just am trying to reach out. Yeah.
I appreciate it, and I promise I was watching this football. I promise I'm gonna lock your number in. You can lock mine in every now and then. If you don't hear from me, check back. Because I know a lot of people, and if I see something, I will, man. It ain't about no money or nothing like that. Because now I'm blessed every day I wake up, brother. I wasn't trying to be like that, brother. It's Troy. I just go with Troy. I'm going to lock you in as soon as I hang up and lock me in, man. Check back with me because I'll be busy sometime, but every now and then something will stumble my way. So I don't hold nobody back from what they're doing, man. Hopefully.
Hey, man, the hustle never stops, right? The hustle never stops.
Hey, you got to eat tomorrow.
I'm trying to eat today.
You know,
Matt, afterwards, he's like, man, I love how aggressive Troy is. He's like on the phones. He's like, David. And you're like, what? And then, do you know what's going on with your house?
Yeah.
No, what?
Dude, I mean, all I can tell you is it's a lot more competitive in Las Vegas than it is in Missouri, so you have to be super aggressive. Like, you're not going to have anything to eat if you're not, so.
Right, but it was also very, like, aggressive might even be the wrong word, because nothing about it was, like, uncomfortable. A lot of times aggression is, like, not a pleasant thing. It was, like, a fun aggression.
Yeah, I mean, like, don't take it too seriously, right? So just freaking have fun with it.
Yeah. And then if it went south, you immediately just brought it back with, hey, well, if you're rooting for the Chiefs, then we're all on the same page, right?
Yeah, you just got to figure out some sort of common ground, maybe get them defenses down, right? And I started my career getting my phone hung up on me, so I'm used to that. You know.
Well, tell us about that. How did you start your career, by the way?
Yeah, so I went to college because of fear, and I was originally going to go to the military, and I went through MEPS processing, which is like your next day before you go into, you take an ASVAB test,
which tests how smart you are. And then you go through MEPS, and that's where they like have you do the crab walk. Everybody pisses, everybody does everything. And I had a plate in my arm from like breaking my hand in high school. And so they were giving me a waiver, which I would have easily got, but the guy was trying to process me faster than like I was supposed to go this day. And then they were like, oh, we'll move him this day. And I was like, I'm down. Like, I'm ready to go. And then I told him, I said, I was always serious about my work. I was like, but I got to be at the restaurant at 12. So we were done with everything by like 8 o'clock. And then they're waiting for my waiver. And it's like 10, it's like 11. It's like, I got to go to work. So I said, I got to go to work. They never called me back. Otherwise, I would have been in the military. That's exactly how it went. What? Yeah, if they would have called me back, I would have been in, but they never called me back. And that, like, maybe, I don't know, maybe I just didn't want to go. I don't really it's so far, it's when I was 19. So it's like, 27 years ago now. So then I decided to get my Merchant Marine card, which was like was my other goal, was to travel the world and just be on one of those oil tankers, right? Like that, or those big ships that are sending everything across the country. So I went and got the card, but then I didn't know what the next step was, like how to go get a job. And so then I decided I wanted to work on like a cruise line. Anyways, all these little crazy ideas. I finally said, you know what? Somebody told me, keep your options open, go to college. I go to Bellevue Community College. I use that to get into Central Washington University, graduate. Got my degree. My degree, the last thing I need to do is get an internship at a radio station. That radio station, I turned that into a job. So I was an intern from like on-air personality, like with those guys. It was called the BJ Shea Experience. Shout out to BJ Shea. He's still rolling. And then basically, I became the promotions director of KISW and the Buzz FM and Intercom Radio, Seattle, Washington, 1100 Olive Way. And that job sucked. It wasn't for me, but I did it really well because I take my job seriously. I've taken every job seriously. I did that really well. And then what happened was, I hated my fucking boss. Like, she was a total, and I was making $8 an hour as a graduated college promotions director, and I still had to work at Red Robin at nights and weekends. So I was working at Red Robin, certified designated trainer. Like I'd worked there for 8 years. I started as the DMO, which is the dish machine operator. For those of you guys who are not in the know, I was the only Anglo-Saxon guy there. I was with all my compadres were Mexican or Hispanic, and I was the only guy. And so really what happened was, after college, I turned my promotions director job turned my internship into a job. I hated my job, still working at Red Robin, the job I worked to pay my way through college. And then I'm like, okay, let me get and one of the guys who was stealing all my Dr. Peppers was a guy named Jeff Sears. And we became friends. He's still a good friend of mine to this day. And he's like, you need to get into sales. You're like, you're natural. Yeah. And so he convinced me to get into it. And I fucking wiped the floor with everybody in that station. Like, I'd never sold before. I didn't know what I was doing. They gave me a little bit of information. They're like, if you get car guys or if you get other guys, you'll make money. And nobody had car guys and nobody had mortgage guys. So I went after all those businesses. I learned the phone skills that you saw the other day, I learned in radio sales. Like, I learned how to bypass the gatekeeper, get past the person, and then go find the decision maker and then build instant rapport, right? Like, how to find a commonality, look at what's in their office, and then do that. So that's really what got me into sales. I became the number one sales guy, first year in, won sales club. And then after doing that, making the most amount of money I've ever made, $214,000 in 2005, okay? Paid $82,000 in taxes. I won Sales Club, which is in Las Vegas. And then they tell me, right after I won Sales Club, I'm sure Ryan can very much relate to this. They're like, hey, like, you beat everybody combined, you beat them all. Like, they're like telling me all this. Like, you got, like, all the business I brought was built. You have direct or agency. Agency was given. Direct was you went out and got it, okay? And direct, you made 19% commission. Agency, you made 7%. All my business was direct. I mean, I went and actually got it, okay? They took my station. They told me, hey, we're switching it to country. Well, all of my clients were all buying a male demographic. They were buying into the station. And then, so I was going to lose like a majority. I was pacing to make $350 the next year. And I'm looking at, like, I have no control over this entire situation. So I go to the head manager. Her name is Melissa. Whatever. With her, she's total corporate chick. She's like, hey,
blah, 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 blah. I said, well, dude, I beat everybody. I beat everybody in our sales. I did everybody. And I'm like, I want a guarantee. And she's like, well, you're going to get what everybody else got. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I outbeat everybody. And so once I realized I had no control, I won Sales Club, had them extend my trip for a week, took my real estate license in Las Vegas, and moved down there subsequently after that.
Wow. Like, dude, I can't believe that guy stole your Dr. Peppers.
Dude. Well, yeah, it was funny. I was the brokest guy there. I was making $8 an hour, and he's a sales guy. And he's like, hey, can I grab one? And then you get like grabbed. And I was like, sure, help yourself. Normally when you say, sure, help yourself, you don't think somebody's actually going to like just.
You don't mean it. You do not mean it.
Well, I meant it, but I didn't mean like take everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those phone skills really carried over. And Ryan, go ahead. But dude, it was such a treat to meet with you last week when we were both in person in Florida, and we made some cold calls. I mean, I learned a lot from you. I don't know if you have 10 tips that you want to share, but I mean, if you did, I'd definitely love to share those with the DealMachine audience.
So I have actually kind of proprietized my proprietary thinking, which would be the 3 C's: compliment, confidence, and credibility. Okay. Number one, no matter who you're talking to, if I say, David, you got a really nice haircut, which you do, by the way, like automatically,
Hector,
shout out to Hector. Like right away, like automatically people like compliments. If I say, Ryan, I like your Mustang, it's a beautiful car, right away I'm building rapport. So I'm always going to try to find somebody to compliment them on that I'm sincere about. Barbara, that's a really nice name. That's what's the name of one of my first girls, whatever the heck I can say that can relate to them right away. I'm going to compliment them. Okay. I'm going to come across with confidence, right? That like just the way I present myself, that's something, how you present yourself is confidence. And then credibility, if I don't have my own, which is what I tell my students, I'm like, use mine. I'm your partner. If the students are joining the program, they're brand new and they're like, they're not sales. Ryan's got a great background in sales. I watched him. He's a great sales guy in front of customers. A lot of people are not going to be able to have that same skill set that trained sales professionals have. So the credibility can be like, me and my partner have bought and sold thousands of homes, So for me, that's the credibility, right? Like we've helped hundreds of homeowners just like you. So those are my 3 C's: compliment, confidence, and credibility. Okay. And I think the first C is the most important.
Yeah. Man, it was so funny. That guy was like, man, I'm so sick and tired of you. He's like, sir, I've never spoke with you before. And he was like, oh, no, I know. And then he went from being mad to like, you flipped the script on him. Then he was apologizing to you.
Yeah.
That was crazy to see.
And then he started saying he's going to look for houses for me.
He did say that. I know, right? You totally flipped the script on him. That was masterful.
Well, I think that a lot of times, it's all emotions, right? People are like, when you're calling them, especially if you're calling them and you are not. The other tip that I would say to people if we're talking cold calling is the number one thing that you can do to screw up a phone call is say, hey, is this Ryan Haywood? Hey, is this David Lecco? How are you doing? Like, number one, right now I've identified that I don't know you and I really don't care how you're doing. And I just got no better way. But if I could, hey, Ryan, it's Troy. Like, he's like, oh, shit, who is Troy? Like, he's like,
right.
Yeah, like, I should know this because he's calling me by my first name, acting like he's my friend. Hey, and I hope you got a few minutes. I hope I didn't bother you. Just wanted to talk to you. I did send you a postcard on that house that you have, and I'm not sure if you got it, but if you just got a few minutes to talk, and then it's like you're starting off as a conversation as their friend versus automatically triggering all of these things that are going to be like, salesperson, bad, don't want to be sold anything.
Right. And then you're like, are you familiar with what's going on at that property?
Right.
Yes. They are definitely like perking up when you said that. Yeah. It's way different than, hey, do you own this property?
Yeah. Why would you ask somebody that you already know that owns it, that you've got their phone number? If you say, hey, Brian, and you're looking at the address and it's Brian, right? You're like, hey, Brian. He's like, yeah. I don't want to say like, hey, do you own the house? I already know you own the house. Hey, Brian, I'm not sure if you're aware of what's going on in that neighborhood right now, but you know what I mean? But is an excellent transition. It's like for everything. But, there's been a lot of home invasions. There's been a lot of home burglars. Everybody knows that. Vacant houses. checking on things. I'm, and the worst thing you could say is I'm a local investor. Like, nobody cares about investors. Investors is a bad word. Like, I always tell people, tell them your story. My name is Troy Kearns, and me and my family, we buy houses. This is what we do for a living, right? Like, people can understand that. First say, like, I'm an investor. I'm this huge guy, and I do all these things. I'm just a regular guy, just like you. You and me are just regular people. We're just trying to do a deal together, and I'm going to treat you fairly. I'm going to treat you honestly. I'm going to be transparent with you.
Yeah. No, it was great. I've been doing some cold calling myself, and I try to channel my inner Troy from that. So thanks for sharing some of those cold calling tips. Did you actually get your first wholesale deal cold calling, by the way?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything that we've done, a majority of it has been through cold calling. Whether, sending mail is great. When the phone calls come in, that's fantastic. That would be called a warm call. But a lot of times you're going to have to follow up with those people. And, you're going to have to take action when you're trying to wholesale, and you're going to have to make sure that you're, leading the conversation where it needs to go. And and people always say, well, I don't leave messages on the phone. I'm like, why don't you? They're like, well, because, I don't want to. I'm like, why wouldn't you want to practice your pitch on the voicemail? Why wouldn't you, why wouldn't you want to be like, if you don't talk ever, if you don't leave any messages ever, then the first time you get somebody on the phone, you're going to fumble all over the place.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about like, what is the perfect voicemail? I was leaving, what was I saying yesterday? Hey, this is David. I was just calling to let you know, some things going on with this property over here. One of the things is the prices have definitely gone up. I'm a local property owner, and I was wondering if you'd like to receive an offer on that property. So tweak my pitch.
Yeah. So I would, the first thing is there's two things. One, like the way that pitch comes across to me is like, why do I care about David's news? Like, if you're giving me news about things that are going on in the area, I only care about myself, right? That's all people care about is themselves. So first thing I want to do, if I want to get a phone call back from anybody, and I'm going to be very careful with this, because if you're using like call blasters and stuff, I've had my students test this. I might say something like, hey, David, it's Troy. It's urgent. Call me about your property. If I want to call back, that's going to get a call back, because curiosity is going to say, if I say, hey, Ryan, it's urgent. Can you call me about your property ASAP? Like, that is short, sweet, and I'm going to get a call back. Now, I might get heat. I might get like, what? Well, I don't know if you know, but there's been a few break-ins. I own houses down the area, and I'm just wanting to make sure you're aware that, like, I seen, whatever the situation is, if you could say an honest conversation, have it like, say, hey, I was driving by the area. I noticed there was a bunch of guys that have been breaking into houses. I want to make sure your house is secured, and that there's guys breaking in the house. And by the way, what are your plans with it? You know what I mean? You don't want to say like, I wouldn't say anything about the market or conditions or that, or get them talking anything about that way. For a voicemail, that's not that what I would say was aggressive, because you got to be able to deal with the heat that's coming back at you, which not everybody's able to deal with. I would leave that message sometimes, but I would say something more like, hey, my name's Troy Kearns. I was in your neighborhood. And I'm not sure if you know, but there's a lot of activity going on by your property. Give me a call back, or something like that. That's going to pique curiosity. Another tip that I'm going to tell you that I do, and I don't think anybody even knows this, but I teach all my students with DealMachine to do this exact same thing. You know what we do when we drive for dollars?
No.
We take a selfie of ourselves in front of the house.
DealMachine listeners, I'm wearing my turtleneck, not because it's Steve Jobs' birthday, not because Apple just announced they're integrating AI into their phones. Nope, none of that. It's because we're coming up on DealMachine Unveiled, which is our special live presentation where we're unveiling the latest innovation in real estate technology. Last November, we had an Unveiled event, and we broke down the house with unlimited skip tracing, which also improved, with our private investigator tool, the accuracy of your skip tracing results by 50%, meaning if you don't get data, you can actually see every person with that homeowner's name all in one spot, in one place. There's no other place you can get that. So come July 1st, reserve your spot, get notified, be among the first to see what's coming next for the real estate industry. The URL, by the way, is DealMachine.com/unveiled.
Okay. Now, I don't know if this is something that you guys have ever talked about, but this is what I've told my own students. The reason that we do it is because we want people to know if they're if they're driving for dollars and they're actually in front of the house, what shows them that I'm actually a real person in front of the house? A selfie of me being like, hey, I'm here in front of it.
Right.
And people a lot of times will think that's clever.
Right. No, it's actually going to stand out more than a generic letter that they're getting from people who have no face, right?
Yeah, well, even if somebody else sends a postcard through your platform to the same house and they got two of them, one has a picture of a person, the other one has a picture of a house.
Correct.
So they're like, oh, this guy actually was here.
Yeah. All right. So let's transition into, what did you end up making on your first wholesale deal, by the way? And that was in Las Vegas, I think, right? Because now you live in Kansas City.
No, my first wholesale deal was in New Orleans. And we actually made $90,000. Yeah.
On your first deal?
Yeah.
That's unheard of. Are you serious?
Yeah. But listen, it was a 3D. So I made 33,000. My partner made 33,000 and the actual, so it was a daisy chain. Okay. So it was a property that we called, in Vegas, wholesaling wasn't really an active thing. And I had actually partnered with a guy, Christian Nard, who's a partner of mine on a lot of properties. And he was a wholesaler. And I didn't know any wholesalers in Vegas at all. But in 2013, I started investing in New Orleans. And in New Orleans, there's a lot of wholesaling to be done. So he really taught me the craft of wholesaling, Christian Nard did. Because I wasn't doing it in Vegas. I was just an agent and just buying on and off market properties. But we actually did $90,000 on that deal. And we did probably over from 2013 to 2016. We did a lot of wholesale and a lot of wholesale deals. But that first one I'm telling you about was an old, 1800s built house that a developer bought from us. And the guy who wholesaled it, because we didn't have the buyer list for it, we ended up getting it for 90. His name was Carl Finero. He's still an active wholesaler in Louisiana. We ended up making 99, whatever I said, 33, 33, and 33 on that deal.
Wow.
How did you find that deal?
That's great.
Was that
I walked... Yeah, we cold called it. So I walked the entire area of Magazine so I'd go down there and I'd stay down there for a couple weeks, and I walked there's a street in New Orleans called Magazine Street, and so I just they had a bunch of vacant houses on there, so I called every house on Magazine Street that was vacant, and we ended up picking up, we made a couple $100,000 on a few houses down there, just being very aggressive after that market.
Dude, that's crazy.
You would walk Magazine Street, you would be the one that was getting them under contract, but then you had a JV partner that had access to buyers.
Yeah, in New Orleans, we had a JV partner on a lot of the deals because my partner knew how to wholesale deals, but he was kind of doing the same thing, Ryan, when you first started. He had a well, you didn't even have the job, but he was working as a salesperson for pharmaceutical but surgical equipment. And so he was doing wholesaling part-time, and a lot of times he just had a few buyers, and if it didn't fit their buy box, he would partner with somebody else that had a bigger buyers list. And that's what we did for a lot of those original deals.
Wow, that's awesome.
Was wholesaling your start to real estate? Is that how you got started?
No, I started buying, so I bought my first house in 2002, bought my second one in 2004, did what is now referred to as house hacking. At my point in time, I just called it renting out my rooms. And then the second one was a live-in fix and flip that I bought, finished myself. Believe it or not, Ryan, I actually did the work. Yeah,
I want to see it.
Uncle. Yeah. It just sold for $800,000. But I didn't get my start wholesale. I didn't get started wholesaling until I met Christian Nard, because in Vegas, I just was such trained as an agent that I couldn't even see how to do it, if that makes any sense. It just didn't make sense to me. It's because I was such trained as an agent, but when I went outside of my market, that's where it made a lot of sense. And then we wholesaled a lot of deals from 2016 to 2019 to guys like Ryan Pineda. And I was doing a lot of probate deals back then. And so I did a lot of wholesaling to just two people, Pineda and another Israeli guy who bought a lot of properties. That if I didn't want them, I'd sell them to those guys because I knew they'd pay more than I'd want to pay.
So funny. That was before Pineda was the both of you big internet social media guys, right?
Yeah, Pineda got me into it. I went and took him out to lunch, and I was like, "Why are you putting all your like checks out there? How much money you made and stuff like that?" I'm like, because I'll be full transparent. I was hating on him. I was like, me and another guy, you know him, Ryan, Josh Galindo. We were kind of like talking shit a little bit. We're like, why is this guy out here? Like, we've been flipping for a long time. Why is this guy out here showing everybody the money? We're old school. You don't show the money. You don't let people know what you made. And then once he kind of explained why he was doing it, he gave me his social media course. And I don't think he thought I would. I think he thought I was like most people, that I wouldn't stick with it. Right. And so I stuck with it. And I think Ryan and I were very actively opposed to social media at that point in time as well. Like, we had a lot of conversations about that. So
got it. Well, I'm really excited to hear about your phone skills and how sales transferred over into wholesaling. As I'm checking out your social media page, it says retire in 1 to 3 years by investing in real estate. Don't wait. Tomorrow's not guaranteed, which definitely lights a fire under my butt. Do you teach wholesaling, or is wholesaling just a part of that?
Yeah, so we teach all of it, because I always say, like, real estate is not, like, people will say, like, hey, wholesaling, hey, Section 8, hey, this, hey, that. Those are all strategies. But, like, the thing we're doing is trying to find distressed property, all of us, right? We're trying to find motivated sellers in distressed property. So we absolutely teach wholesaling as one of the exit strategies for the property. And especially for people who are, like, starting out brand new and don't have any money, you know, it's the best way to start, right? But a lot of times people who have money and capital and want to get going, they're going to burn out trying to wholesale, right? So we'll push them towards flipping if they have money and they're active. But if they're brand new and they're trying to get started and they don't have money and they're aggressive and they want to get on the phones and they're willing to spend the money and spend the time and they're going to stick with, wholesaling is, in my opinion, one of the best ways to get started in real estate. The only problem is with it right now is it's very competitive. You know, as you know, it wasn't as competitive back in the day.
Yeah. All right. Well, how do you, when you have a deal that comes through, how do you decide to wholesale it versus do something else with it?
That's a great question. So we look at, like, okay, number one, I believe in fast money. So if we could flip it and if we could wholesale it, make 20 grand and flip it and make 40, I'd rather wholesale it all day, right? Because the time velocity of money. So it's usually about the time velocity of money and then the exposure to risk. So we'd rather wholesale a lot of things, but a lot of times if I make the buyer or the seller a promise that I'm going to buy the property, then I close the property, and because I don't want to dilute my reputation by saying, yeah, you know, we're going to close the property, and then, like, you know, I tell a lie or something like that. So if I tell the seller I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, close it down. We might wholesale it, but I still closed it.
Right.
You know, so it's just in terms of the way we look at wholesaling is, like, you know, it's never been my go-to. It's never been like where I'm a rental guy first and foremost. So wholesaling is always a strategy of what you need to do in real estate. For me, it's never been the end all and be all. It's been a great strategy of something to have in your tool belt. In fact, Ryan is probably the person that I've known that has done the most wholesale deals of anybody that I've ever met, ever. Like, and single-handedly. I would say there's a lot of wholesale guys who do a lot of business, but they usually have a big team. But as somebody who I saw do more wholesale deals in one market, I was like, he's the first guy I've seen ever do that amount of deals. Right. So I think there's a lot of wholesalers that do 1 or 2 deals, maybe a month at the most, and they're considered good. But it's very hard to find people doing a good stock of business.
But you actually bought deals from Ryan in the beginning.
17.
That was 20. Was that 2019?
That was 2020. That was in the first year of doing it. So of the 72 that we did, 17 we did with Troy.
Love it.
Yeah. Well, I knew his prices were going to go up. He was the aw shucks. He was just figuring it out, but I knew he's a smart guy, assessed the situation very quickly. Ryan is a great sales guy. He was just cutting his teeth. He was still kind of figuring out the whole contracting thing, but I knew he was seeking knowledge. He was asking me lots of great questions. He was asking, I could tell he was the killer. And even though he didn't look like a killer, like, he was playing the, like, I'm like, this guy's a killer. He's going to crush it. And he was asking good questions. So I knew, even though he had in his mind right now that like, hey, I'm just going to give you kind of like my fixed wholesale price. I was like, that's going to change. Like, he's going to get more educated and that's going to change. So I was like, and I knew St. Joe, just the way he was going, that market was going to change because of him single-handedly. So I felt like it would be a good opportunity to buy as many properties as I could buy while it made sense and check out the market. And those ended up pretty well for us.
Love it. Well, I think Instagram might be the best place for people to go find you, right? The Troy Kearns.
Yeah, so it's at the Troy Kearns. You could just, we've got a lot of stuff on TikTok. Instagram is my preferred. If you're going to ask me my preference, it's Instagram. We've got 150,000 followers on YouTube and 290 on TikTok, but Instagram is where I spend most of my time.
Yeah, I love Instagram too. It's been the most predictable, and when I post something that I think is valuable, it ends up getting the most views on Instagram. I haven't figured out the other platforms yet. I'll just say that.
I think the only thing is just take your reels and repost them, right? Like, none of the other platforms are really... We're trying to figure out TikTok Shop. That's the thing I'm working on right now.
TikTok Shop? What's Shop? Oh, you can sell stuff on there.
Yeah, we just think it makes a good sense. Like, I use a lot of these, like, I don't know, I buy stuff off there, so if I'm buying it, why wouldn't I sell it too if I use it and people could make money off of it? So we're working on that right now as well.
Love it. Anything else that you'd want to add and give advice to somebody who's looking to get their first deal?
Yeah. So the number one thing, if you're looking to get your first deal, listen up right now, okay? First of all, we all know exactly what you're feeling because every student feels the same way. You're scared, so let's just admit that you're scared, and you don't know everything, and you're not going to know everything, and so you're scared you don't know everything, but the one thing that you can control is the action that you take, okay? And so you have to take action. And if you're like, well, I'm going to get a deal in 30 days or whatever, that may not happen. So what I would say is find your strategy. If your strategy is going to be wholesaling, stick with it until you get a deal and then evaluate. One thing I really enjoy about Ryan is he's always constantly reflecting on his golf score, on this, on that, on the other thing. You have to be able to look at where you're going to find out and look at how far you've gotten before you quit, right? And it's easy to quit, and most people are going to quit. So that would be the number 2 advice is do not quit. Like, if you quit on yourself. If everybody else has done this, and there's a bunch of people who have done it successfully, then why the hell couldn't it be you? Well, it can be. If you decide to quit, it's you. If you don't decide to quit and you are able to figure this out, it could change your freaking life. Like, we're looking at 3 people right now on the screen whose life real estate has changed through this thing, and we're passionate about it. So the biggest thing is don't quit and start today. That would be my best advice.
Appreciate it. That's a great place to end. And the Troy Kearns on Instagram is where you can find Troy. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, especially on the cold calling, something I'm very into right now. So, looking forward to seeing the video that we did while we were in Florida, which is coming out on your podcast, or is it on your YouTube channel?
It'll be on both. Yeah.
Okay.
So it'll be on all the podcast formats and YouTube.
Cool. Perfect. Thank you so much, Troy.
Appreciate it, David. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.